Hey, it's John here with Faith Generation. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to Video Church. I wanted to let you know about when I was younger, I went to college, and I went to UMass Amherst, which is the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, Massachusetts, and I was lucky enough to go to that college with my brothers. They we're all a year apart, and so they were able to go, and we were able to, I really liked it because we were able to spend time together. We were able to enjoy the same experiences together, and it was a lot of fun. One Christmas came, and Christmas break came, and I had left to go home, and we each had our own cars, so I left, and I was at the house, and then I get a call from my brother Michael, who hadn't left yet. Apparently he had left after me, and on the way, his car broke down. So I started to ask him a few questions, like, hey, where are you? You know, can you tell me a little bit more about what's happening? Now, I want you to know and understand a few things about University of Massachusetts and where we lived. We lived an hour away from the University of Massachusetts. Back then also, it's important to know this for the story, is that we didn't have personal cell phones at that time. And also, the University of Massachusetts is kind of in the middle of the nowhere. There's no real city that's there. It's kind of created because the college is there. So I'm questioning him, hey, where are you? There's different ways that you could get there, of course. And so he says, well, I took Route 9 and I drove for about a half an hour, and then my car broke down. I pulled over to the side of the road and I went to this farmhouse because it's been snowing, and so I went inside and I called you. So I said, okay, great, I'll head out and I will meet you on the way there then. So I get in my car and I start taking Route 9 and I'm heading there, and so I figure about a half an hour I should reach him, but I don't see his car. And the snow's starting to come down more, and it hasn't covered everything completely, so I know I'll be able to see a car, but I haven't seen it yet. So I keep driving, and eventually I don't see it. And I get all the way to Amherst at the University of Massachusetts, and I'm like, I didn't see his car. Maybe I missed it. So I pulled over. I got to a payphone. Payphones look kind of like this back then, and I put my money in there. Thankfully, I had change. You always kept change on yourself back then because you needed it in case you needed to use a payphone. So I call him at the farmhouse. He had given me the number. He was staying inside the house waiting. And so I call him up and I said, hey, you said that you drove about a half an hour. I didn't see your car. Are you sure you took Route 9? He's like, yeah, no, I'm 100% sure. I'm like, you positive it was Route 9? Yes. And I go, and you drove a half an hour. Can you describe what it looked like while you were driving? And he goes, well, at first I drove past this little small city. And I'm thinking, there's no small city between us and University of Massachusetts. And I thought, all right. And he goes, but are you 100% sure you're on Route 9? I'm like, did you drive east or did you drive west? Because we lived east, and if you go west, that's in the wrong direction. He goes, no, I think I got it right, but I don't really know. So I said, all right, I'm going to keep driving, and I'll go another half an hour, and I'll see what happens. So I just kept going. Sure enough, I went through the small city of Northampton. I kept driving, and about 20 minutes later, I finally see his car. And I get in there, and I'm like, hey, Michael, you realize you were going west when you were supposed to be going east. And he's like, well, I don't know. I just left. I thought I was going in the right direction. I wasn't even paying attention. And so I was like, but actually, I was just happy to see him, even though that was like a 3-hour tour the whole day after that, just to get back home. What direction you're heading in when you're traveling really makes a difference. I mean, if you jump on I-75 from here and your plan is to go to Tampa, but you head south, you're never going to make it to Tampa. You're going to make it to Miami. And maybe if your car can float, you might make it to Cuba, right? You're just not going to get there. There are things in life that really matter, especially if you want to end up in the right destination. If you're just taking life easily or casually, you may not make it there. Most of our regrets come in life because we didn't really take things seriously when we should have, when we didn't maybe care about what mattered in the moment. Sometimes you look back and realize how important something really was. If you've ever missed an important date or an anniversary, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's in that moment when the person brings it up to you that you had wished 2 days ago that you had treated it a lot more seriously than you did, right? You wish you could kind of go back in time and focus on it and probably do it right because it mattered, right? You didn't realize it, but it mattered. And there are some things that you just can't go back and do over. There comes a times when the ship has sailed. You can't fix it. You can't go back and change it. You're kind of stuck with the consequences, and you just have to live with it. It would be tragedy to get to the end of our lives and to have a ton of regrets, having missed what really mattered in our lives. I'd hate to think that I had traveled in the wrong direction in my life all that time to get to the end and finally realize that I missed some stuff, because life is going to take you in a destination. Every decision that you make or every decision that you don't make is deciding and guiding the trajectory of your life. The time that you spend on things or the times that you don't spend on things, where you've invested your resources or where you haven't invested your resources, the relationships that you've nurtured or the relationships that you've neglected, it all decides where you end up in life, because you don't want to have left what's mattered undone. It's important to know what really matters in life and what doesn't, and that's what we're here to find out today. You see, we're in our series, The Meaning of Everything, and we've been studying the book of Ecclesiastes. It's an Old Testament book. It was written by King Solomon, who was one of the wisest men who walked the earth. And it's his attempt to discover the meaning and purpose of life. And so he tries all these experiments to try to figure out what that is. And we may not have all the resources that Solomon had, but Solomon is going to give us some advice now. He's coming to the end. We're in the last chapter, and he's coming to his conclusions, and we've been summing it up over the last couple weeks that it was important to gain wisdom and how important it is to seek out God. But here he talks to us to try to really narrow down what really matters in life. So Solomon begins with this poetic language, and I'm going to read it, all of it, so just bear with me if you will. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are not darkened, and the clouds do not return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men bow down, when the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look through the windows grow dim, when the doors are shut in the streets, and the sound of the grinding is low, when one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of music are brought low. Also, they are afraid of height and of terrors in the way. When the almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper is a burden, and desire fails. For man goes to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the well. Then the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanities. He starts off this whole section with these words, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth. Because Solomon wants you to know this, that while there is still time, make time for what matters. While there is still time, make time for what matters. Our kids get a timeout when they're misbehaving. It's tough to discipline children, and so what we do is when we have to constantly remind them to do something, or they're not being obedient, or they're just ignoring us, then we'll give them a timeout. And that's our main form of punishment. And it kind of works this way. We, as you probably know, timeout, you put them in a place where they don't want to be. Usually it's up against the wall somewhere, and we have a designated spot that they can't move from, and they have to stay there for a certain amount of time. Now, timeouts in our house don't start until they've stopped crying or stopped whining or stopped complaining. They have to be totally calm, because if they go through the whole timeout and they're still crying, it really didn't make a difference. So first they have to calm down, and then the timeout starts. Now each one of them has a different amount of time. Because Woody is young, we do it by the number of years that they have. How old they are is the number of minutes that they have to stay in timeout. Woody is 3, he has a 3-minute timeout. Gwendolyn is 5, she gets a 5-minute timeout. And Charlotte is 7, she gets a 7-minute timeout. And that is because they need to feel the length of time. By now, a minute doesn't mean much to Charlotte. You know, is it just me, or does time seem to be getting faster as we get older? I don't know about you, but when I was young and my grandmother told me to wait, 5 minutes seemed like an hour. An hour seemed like an eternity. Now, I can't get anything done in an hour. It seems like it goes by in 5 minutes. I don't know if that's the same for you. Time seems to pass so quickly. Moses penned these words to you and I. He gave us his knowledge. He says this, our days may come to 70 years or 80. If our strength endures. Yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. We're encouraged to think about how many days we truly have on this earth. You know, I don't know how old you are. I don't know how old you plan to be. I plan to live to be over 100. My goal, realistically, is 140. I know it sounds crazy, but maybe I'll settle for 120. But whatever your day is, let's say it's 80, let's say it's 100. Take where you are right now and subtract your age from the number that you think you're going to live toward. That's how many days you have left. And when you look at it, some of you may be saying, mine's already half gone. Mine's already 75% gone. Maybe some of you, it's only 25%, whatever it is. But it makes us start to think, what have we accomplished and what will we be accomplishing? Moses says, teach us to number our days so that we would think wisely and use the days that we have in a wise way. And that's what Solomon is saying. He says this, remember our Creator. Remember is an action word. It means to act decisively. He's saying act decisively toward God now while you still can, while you're still young and you have the strength to do it. The poetic imagery that he employs here, it's a word picture describing old age. When he talks about the keepers of the house tremble, he's talking about our hands that keep our house, that they allow us to do stuff. When they start to shake and tremble, or the strong men bow down, he's talking about our shoulders and our hips. And you see older men and older people, we start to hunch over, right? Or the grinders cease because they are few. He meant their teeth are falling out. Thank God we have dentists today, right? I would have hated to live back then. I would have lost half my teeth already. But thank God for dentists, they saved them. But when your teeth start falling out, the only thing you can do is gum stuff. Or the windows grow dim. He's talking about our eyesight. We can't see anymore. Or the sound of grinding is low. That means we can't hear. Our hearing begins to go. Or rising up at the sound of a bird. He's describing the older person who has trouble sleeping anymore and they wake up earlier. I don't know about you, I'm getting a little bit older and I wake up early all the time now and I'm like, I never thought it would happen. I used to love to sleep. And the daughters of music are brought low. He's talking about the fact that our voice begins to fail us. I don't know about you, but if you've ever seen an old singer and that was your favorite band and you hear them sing now and you're like, man, they can't hit the notes that they used to. You know, he's talking about the almond tree blossoms, and the almond tree had white blossoms. It would cover the whole top. He's talking about our hair turns white, and sometimes it flies away just like the blossoms do. Or the grasshopper becomes a burden. He's talking about the lack that grasshoppers are quick, but now they're slow and they have to drag themselves around. Or that desire fails. He's talking about the losses of our appetite or the loss of sexual desire that it comes with age. This is a picture of how difficult things are as we get older. He belabors all these points to show us that, man, you know, it's a little bit depressing. I didn't want to get there, right? Because he's saying, look, when you get older, it's harder to do things. You begin to lose the things that you're able to do now, the ability to do them, the opportunity to do them. You see, we sometimes put off what's important, thinking that we'll be able to get to it later. I'll work hard now and make it up to my family later. Or first, let's go and get that brand new house and then I'll work on my marriage later. Or I'll eat all I want now and then I'll eat more responsibly when I get a little bit older. Or I'll give money, but when I have more of it, when I'm working harder, when I get more money, that's when I'll give it. Or I know I should commit to God, but someday I still have time. I know I still have time. And I know that's what I thought when I was younger. I kept putting it off. Lord, there's always a chance or an opportunity to turn to Him. You know, we do this because we think someday it'll be easier. Maybe the circumstances won't be in our lives that are keeping us from doing it. Somehow life will be easier, our schedules will open up, or maybe our resources will be greater and we're able to do it. But putting things off will always make things harder. Putting things off doesn't make things easier. The older we get, the more difficult it becomes. That's what he's trying to tell us. Things only get harder with age. When we put things off, by the way, it's called procrastination. As an expert at it, I can tell you that it makes things harder. It doesn't make things easier. When you procrastinate, you put things off, you usually find you have less time. You find you have less opportunity. And you usually find that it cost you a whole lot more than it would have if you just reacted when you had the time. We imagine we're going to do it someday, but that someday often never comes. Eventually, we can run out of time. And that's what he says when he says, remember your Creator before the silver cord is loosed. He's talking about your spine. Before that's loose, before you can't move anymore, before the golden bowl is broken, he's talking about your head, your skull, and your mind is gone. And he's talking about when the wheel is broken at the well. He's talking about our heart that pumps our blood. These are vital organs, and when those are gone, that's it. Once that time comes, it's too late. There's no more time to accomplish anything of significance. And here's where all the regret happens. When we get to those moments, when we get to the end, when we realize, look, I can't go back. I can't change things. I can't get younger. I can't get better. We start to look back and think of all the missed opportunity. And that's when we go, man, these are the things that I should have done. These are my regrets that I have. None of us know when that day will be, by the way. None of us know when our time is up. I was looking at, it's only May. Well, May, it's the 5th month already. But I was looking at how many celebrities have died so far in 2020. It's easy to Google just celebrities that died in 2020, right? And a whole list will come up. Some of the ones that really were shocking to me because, they make you think about life one was Jerry Stiller. You may remember him from Seinfeld, or you may remember him from The King of Queens. Another person was Kirk Douglas. Some of you are older. By the way, they were both 92 years old when they died. They lived a good long life. How about Little Richard? He was an old singer from the 60s. Or Kenny Rogers. Some of us may know him. He was 81, Kenny Rogers. Here's one that surprised me was Cy Sperling. I don't know if you remember him, the Hair Club for Men. He was 78 years old. But also, what really got to me was guys like Kobe Bryant. You know who he was, played for the Lakers. He was a basketball player, died at age 41. There's another guy named Harry Haynes, and he's an actor, a model, and a musician. And he died at the age of 27. And then Cameron Boyce, only 20 years old. You may know him from the trilogy of the Descendants movies, Disney Descendants. He was the Dalmatians kid. We never know when we're going to go. Some of us live to a ripe old age, and some of us, we don't know when that time's going to happen. Time is not guaranteed to you or to me. We always think that there's more time. I always do too, because what happened to them happens to somebody else. It doesn't happen to me. But we never know when our time is up. And there's no better time than to do something for God when he asks you to do it then. And so I want to encourage you right now, whatever you've been putting off, now is the time. So what really matters though? What's important to do? Well, that's what Solomon wants to tell us. So he goes on. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yes, he pondered and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find acceptable words and what was written was upright, words of truth. The words of the wise are like goads, and the words of scholars like well-driven nails, given by one shepherd. And further, my son, be admonished by these. Of making books there is no end, and much study is wearisome to the flesh. Solomon is trying to tell us this as he's writing these words, is that God knows what really matters. God knows what really matters. The irony of growing old is that we usually don't have what we need when we need it. You see, when we're young, we have strength and we have energy, but what we lack is the wisdom to know where to put that strength and energy to good use. That's the challenge. You can put it all toward doing something that doesn't matter. And many of us, if we look back on our youth, we think, yeah, I wasted a lot of time. I think back now of all the time that I had, and I was like, why didn't I learn to play like an instrument? Why didn't I learn to do some other craft or something else that I really wish I had the time for now? And we had the energy, we had the time, we had the resource, but we didn't know how to use it. Mark Twain said this, because when we were younger, we also thought we knew it all. Sometimes it was hard to hear what someone else had to say. Mark Twain said this, when I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant, I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much he had learned in 7 years, right? We gain a little bit more wisdom. We recognize wisdom as we begin to grow. And if we want to do what matters, then we have to learn from someone. The problem is there are so many voices that are in our heads, so many people that are speaking to us, trying to tell us what matters. Maybe it's your friends or your teachers or your parents or your siblings or other family members. There's just so many voices out there. And that's why Solomon wrote, the making of books, there is no end. Of the making of books, there is no end. Do you know that there's about 1 million books published every single year? I mean, everybody has an opinion on something. But do you really want to get confused? Then just turn on the TV news and look at what they're reporting about the coronavirus. It'll have your head spinning. My wife came up to me the other day and she's showing me this video on her phone. And it's about this woman who had worked with Dr. Anthony Fauci. And she's saying that everything that he's doing is wrong, that we should be doing the opposite of what we're doing in order to combat the virus. And my wife looks at me and she says, what do you think? And I go, I don't know. I don't have a clue. I mean, some people think that we should stay in isolation even more and keep up with it because we're not doing it enough. And other people are saying, no, we're doing it too much. We need to get out. I really don't know. There's so many things, so many voices telling us different things. I mean, who are we to believe? Listen, Solomon's trying to tell us there's only one source that really matters. It's God. The Apostle Paul writes this as he's writing to the church in Corinth. He says this, for the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. Like God, even in his dumbest, is smarter than you and me. Even at his weakest, he's a whole lot stronger than you and I. His opinion trumps everything. What God says matters is important. And if you want to know what matters, then you have to go to God. Solomon is actually talking about the Bible here. He's talking about the things that he has written, but you have to realize Solomon is writing the Bible. Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. He wrote the Proverbs. He's written the Song of Solomon. He's written many Psalms. Much of the Bible was being written by him and other people as they were inspired from God. And so as he's writing, he's talking about the Bible. And he refers to this one shepherd. The one shepherd who guided the writing was God. The more we know about God, the more principles that he has that will guide us in our lives. And he says they're like a goad. A goad was simply a long stick with a point at the end. Sometimes it was made of metal. Sometimes it was made of wood. But when the oxen were in front of them, or the sheep, or the pigs, and they want them to go in a certain direction, they'd poke them with the little stick so that they would hurry up and go. And he says these wise sayings, these things written in the Bible, are like a goad to you and me. They quicken our spirit to say, listen, let's go do these things. Let's get them done. He also compares them to well-driven nails because they will stabilize your life. They will bring stability to who you are. You won't be tossed around by everything that someone says, but you'll have direction and you'll have understanding that can only come from God. Solomon comes to a final conclusion, and he says this: let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. This is the last thing that we should know, that ultimately every matter matters. Ultimately, every matter matters. Solomon gets to the conclusion of his grand experiment in life. He tried everything possible, that every path that he could take, he tried everything. He tried pleasure, he tried wealth, he tried possessions, he tried relationships, he tried power. He tried all of these things. And he concluded at the end of it, it's all vanity. Vanity just meant it's a puff of smoke. It just disappears. It's worthless. In a minute it's there, and a second later it's gone. And see, that's the way it is with life under the sun. Remember, if you with us for the last few weeks, you know that when he uses this phrase constantly throughout the book, that life under the sun simply meant life without God. The phrase meant everything that happens under the sun on the earth, but nothing above the sun, nothing in the heavenly realm, nothing that included God or the spiritual. And he's saying all of this is just vanity. Life under the sun meant this, that we're finite creatures, that once we're dead, it's over. There's no God, there's no heaven, there's no eternity. In that scenario, nothing matters. What you do has no lasting value. Pleasure is good for as long as it lasts, and then once it's gone, that's it. It doesn't matter if we do good or bad, because in the end, it won't really make a difference. There's no eternal consequences. What influence you had in life will eventually fade away, and so will the people that you influence. They will disappear too. But when you put God in the equation, then everything matters. What we do on earth makes a difference in eternity. Whether we did bad things or whether we did good things, they're all important to God. Listen to the words of Jesus as he's talking to the crowd. He says, a good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you that for every idle word that men speak, they will give an account in the day of judgment. So because even these little things matter to God, he's saying, look at even the small things that you do. We think it's always the big things, but even the small things matter. They have a temporal effect here on earth, but they have an eternal effect in heaven. You know, after we got married, my wife wanted to get braces. And so I loved her teeth. I really did. And I didn't really want her to get them, but she wanted to, so we went and got them. And on one of the visits, she would continually go, as you know, if you've ever gotten braces, they have to continually tighten them and do all these torturous things to you. I think they enjoy it, but whatever it is, they do it, and you pay them money for it. And so she was there one day, and then the secretary realized through a conversation she was having with someone else that my wife attended Calvary Fellowship. That's the church that I spent 19 years as a pastor. And so when she heard that, she goes, oh, do you know Pastor John? Of course she did. She was married to him, but she didn't say that to her. She says, yes, I know Pastor John. I know him. And he said, well, you know, one day he came to the hospital and prayed for my daughter who had cancer. And my daughter's doing fine now. And I actually remember this visitation. I remember it clearly. I walked inside because she happened to be kind of young and she had cancer. And I remember also that the room was kind of filled with people in different areas. And when I go, I always feel inadequate when I go to a hospital visitation because somehow I feel like people are expecting you to pray and like heal the person, you know? And so when you get there, you're thinking, well, all right, I'm going to pray for God's will. I'm going to pray for this person to be healed. And I really hope it does something, you know? And and I've prayed before, and people have actually gotten better. And I've prayed before, people haven't gotten better. But I always do this. I always want to change the physical, the spiritual. I always want to focus on that. So after I pray for them, at the end, I share the gospel with them, and then I lead them in a sinner's prayer. I lead them to pray, to know Jesus. And so I had done that, and the woman told my wife this whole experience, and she said, that's the day that I came to know Jesus, because as he was praying with her, I prayed in my heart. Now, I went there and I thought, I'm praying for this girl. Here's why you have me here, God. I'm praying for her. Maybe you want to do a healing work in her life. Maybe, God, you just want her to know salvation. And all these other people are listening. And I didn't even think about it. I was there for her, but God was there for somebody else. And so you may think the little thing that you're doing doesn't matter, but God is saying, look at John, I'm reminding you right now that you going, showing up and doing what I've asked you to do is having an effect that's eternal in other people's lives. You may not even see it. You see, the day will come when we'll see the true effects that our life has had in this world, whether the things that we did mattered or didn't matter. Listen to what Paul writes as he's talking to this church in Corinthia. He says this, for no one can lay any foundation other than the one we already have, Jesus Christ. Anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials, gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the day of judgment, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. You see, we'll be able to see what value our work here on this earth had when we get to heaven. From the smile that you gave to someone who was down, or maybe the great sacrifice you made to help somebody who was in need. It all matters to God. You see, when we read the book of Ecclesiastes, because it keeps saying vanity of vanities, all is vanities, we may begin to think that the final message of Ecclesiastes is nothing matters. But that's not the truth. What the final message of Ecclesiastes is that everything matters. Everything we do actually matters. We may be running out of time. Our bodies may be slowing down. We may be losing our strength and beauty. We may not be as effective as we once were, but our bodies may be growing old, but our spirit never grows old. Our spirit is eternal, and it will return sometime to God who gave it. And what will happen on that day? You see, what you do matters. Your life matters. Listen, if you've been hearing all these words and you're thinking, I really want my life to matter. Well, first off, dedicate your life to the Lord. Whether you've prayed with Jesus or not. Maybe you say, I'm a Christian and I've been doing life for a while now, but I've just kind of been doing it half-hearted. Then my advice to you is really press in. Find out what God has for you. Because all the time you're missing out. We're missing out on what God has for you and me. I felt that way once in my life. I thought, man, I know God, but I'm really not doing what I think I should be doing. And when I got on that path, that's when God took me on a journey where I eventually became a pastor, and he brought a family into my life, and now I'm pastoring a church. And I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm following God. And as I press in, God is doing things through my life. And he can do the same for you as you press in. And so for you, if you say you're a Christian, then press in right now. Do whatever it takes for God to take you to the place and have a life that matters. So you look back and not thinking, man, I wish I really did do something different. And if you've never received Jesus, now's the time. Don't put it off another day. Because I remember those times when I kept putting it off, thinking, there's always more time to draw close to God. There'll always be a time. We're never guaranteed that. And that's not to scare you. That's just to say a reality. And by the way, the sooner you do it, the sooner you get on God's path for your life. That he's going to fulfill you with purpose. He's going to fill you with your destiny. He's going to give you a reason for why you're on this earth. And it's going to bring fulfillment in your heart. And so if that's you today and you said, man, I've never prayed that, but I would like to pray a prayer and receive Jesus. Now I'm just going to ask you to repeat these words. It's not a magic prayer. It's simply words, and it just comes from the sincerity of your heart. So just repeat after me. Dear God, I open my heart. I ask you to come inside and forgive me for all I've done wrong. Thank you for dying on the cross to forgive me of my sins. Lord, I want to live a life that matters. Help me to do that by being my mentor, by being my guide, by being my Lord, and being my Savior, and being my friend. God, thank you for hearing my prayer. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Hey, if that's you today, I just want to say congratulations. That's the best thing you can ever have done. And I want you to know that something amazing happened when you prayed. God says that he put the Holy Spirit inside of you. And the Holy Spirit is going to help you to make the right decisions, to know what his will is. But you also have to make an effort. You have to draw close to him. And so I want to encourage you to read your Bible and to pray to God daily. And in fact, I have a resource that I want to send you that will help you and remind you of these things. So if you email me at the email below, you'll see it in the comments below. Just email me and give me your information. I will send you that book that will help you on your journey with God. I also want to say to you guys, thank you for joining us today. We'll be back here next week. God bless you all. See you later.